YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Young Mustard, and today we are here with another top video. Obviously not top 10 at every position or anything, because those were some pretty controversial videos. A lot of people had a mix of opinions, but now I'm back in my regular videos bag, and today we are here to talk about 5 NBA players who are obviously young that need to improve next season. Now, before I go any further with this video, if you are not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, comment your opinions down below and drop a like as well. Let's try to get those likes all the way up because I want to keep making content just like this for you guys. And also, if you would like to see me do a season preview for every single team in the NBA, make sure you vote on the poll that should be popping up on the screen right about now. So without further ado, let's get on with this video. Now, the first player that we're going to talk about is Jalen Brown. Now, I personally like Jalen Brown. I think he's a really solid young player, but I think that when you look at this Boston Celtics team, it isn't really fit for his play style, but he does need to step up in a lot of areas. Defensively, he is very, very good, and he could become one of the better two-way players in the league if he keeps getting better at it year after year. But offensively, those are where the struggles come from. Primarily, it's really about if he can be consistent. As a three-point shooter, he is much better than a lot of people anticipated, and even though last year the numbers will suggest that he did go down in that area, if you did watch him towards the end, he started to get his stride a little bit more, but he does need to get better and become more consistent in that area, and hell, maybe become more of a catch and shoot player, because sometimes you can't always have the ball in your hands because you have to be effective without it. And I think that's something that a lot of other players on this team know how to do, but Jalen Brown just doesn't know how to quite do just yet. But I definitely think that next year he has some room to improve if the Boston Celtics want to reach the goal of becoming a championship contender in the Eastern Conference. Now, I don't really like Kevin Knox. Not as a person, I don't know the guy personally, obviously. But Kevin Knox, the player, I do think is very overrated to a lot of fans. A lot of fans see highlights and they see his physical attributes and they say this guy's got a lot of potential, but when he plays, I just don't see it the way others do. I think a lot of people look at the highlights of a guy like Kevin Knox and teams like the Knicks, honestly, and they just say, oh, their young core is so great. Calm down. Other than Mitchell Robinson, I don't really see any great player in that young core, and Mitchell Robinson at best will probably just be a good center that's a really solid rim protector. So yeah, that's out of the equation. But Kevin Knox, back to him, he's just a guy that I just don't understand why he plays so bad. His efficiency is terrible. He turns it over more than he gets assists, and though he has all the physical attributes to be a great player, it's just yet to be shown. And I definitely think that next season he needs to step up and become a top player on this New York Knicks roster, and if he can do so, the Knicks will finally have a bright spot after all the years of suffering that they've had to go through. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh, you're just hating on Jamal Murray. Why is he on this list? Well, when you look at Jamal Murray as a player, he's really solid. I think he's a pretty solid passer. I don't think a lot of people give him credit for that, even though he's not that willing, but we'll definitely get into that in a minute. I think offensively, he can be amazing when he's on, because a lot of times he just isn't, and that's one of the biggest problems with him, but we'll get to that in a minute. I do think defensively, he's gotten better from his rookie year. You've seen the improvement, but let's be honest, he's not that great on that side of the ball, but I do see improvement on that side of the ball, and I definitely saw it last year as all of the Nuggets players, it seemed like they all took a step defensively forward, which they needed to desperately do, and losing Paul Millsap didn't even help their situation. So it was very impressive what the Nuggets players did defensively and how they all stepped up as a unit, and Jamal Murray is not excluded from that conversation. And he's a pretty good shooter as well, can handle the ball, he can do everything you want from a typical guard in today's league. But the problems with him aren't even about the pros or the cons. It's about the expectations that the Denver Nuggets seemingly have given to him. I mean, this guy got a 5-year max contract extension, and with all the flaws in his game and how good of a player he's been so far in his career, even with the opportunities that have been given to him, I do believe that extension was way too much for a player of Jamal Murray's caliber. I don't even know if he would have gotten a max contract had he declared free agency anyways, even though I do know he would have been a restricted free agent and the Nuggets would have had to match it. But them throwing him that contract, I feel like was just a very puzzling move, at least at this stage in his career. I understand he's shown the flashes, but we've seen a lot of flashes where he's been just the opposite, very inconsistent, and those inconsistencies are just not going to go away. And I understand, hey, if he develops, like I said earlier, if he becomes the Robin to Batman, that's fine. If he becomes Nikola Jokic's second partner in crime, that's cool. But if a guy like Chris Middleton is going to be slandered and made fun of due to his contract extension, then we should do the same thing for Jamal Murray. I get it, he's icy, he has nice handles and has nice mixes, but we need to understand the inconsistencies and the huge flaws in his game are only going to get worse if they are not addressed and not fixed right now, because the expectations are high, so he needs to meet that standard with Nikola Jokic in Denver. Now, Lonzo Ball is definitely one of the more polarizing and controversial players in the NBA. With all the stuff that his dad has said about him and the expectations that people have put on him, with all the comparisons, whether it's to Steph Curry, Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd, he's had a lot of expectations on his plate. But right now, all I'm expecting Lonzo Ball to be is a good starting point guard at this point. I mean, this is a guy that can pass just as good as almost anybody in the league, has the vision that is just unparalleled in comparison to a lot of players that have played in the NBA for years. It is crazy, this guy's court vision, and his defense is almost elite. He is a borderline elite defender, and that's something that a lot of people had questions about Lonzo for him coming into the league. But the one thing that he has not fixed is his shot. His shot is so bad. And I'm sorry, I understand his three-point percentage did go up, and at the end of the season he started getting better, but let's be real, he cannot knock down open three-point shots. And if he can't do that, that is a huge issue, especially on this New Orleans Pelicans team that's not going to have a lot of spacing when you got Zion, Brandon Ingram, Jackson Hayes. I mean, it's only going to get worse when it comes to spacing, especially for this roster. So they need Lonzo to improve if they want to keep building this young core, because him and Zion, man, that would be nice if Lonzo got that jumper down. Brandon Ingram. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of Brandon Ingram because, quite frankly, I just don't care about the guy like that. But he's got his fans, he's got his supporters, he's got his haters, his doubters, everybody. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this is one of the most overhyped players I have ever seen in the NBA. I like Ingram as a player, he's not bad or anything, but this is a guy that doesn't have an identity, doesn't have a true game, he just kind of plays. And if we're being honest here, his game is kind of aged. The mid-range game can only take you so far if you don't have a three-point shot. Just ask DeMar DeRozan, see how he's doing in San Antonio right now. I understand he's putting up numbers, but let's be real, he's not the player that a lot of people thought he could be, and he definitely did not live up to his full potential if he kept developing. But when you look at a guy like Brandon Ingram, he was compared to Kevin fucking Durant, which was ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, it is not his fault. But when you have those expectations and you didn't even scratch the surface of those expectations, I'm sorry, that is not a good sign. People forget that Ingram is going into his 4th year in the NBA. And when you look at his expectations, it is very obvious that he has bombed all those expectations, whether you thought he was going to be the next Kevin Durant or not. I mean, think about it. Look at all the young players that have come over the past seasons since he's been drafted, or even in his draft class. Players like Luka Doncic, De'Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, they've all surpassed Brandon Ingram, and that's not a great sign. I mean, hell, look at Buddy Hield, a guy that a lot of people thought was a bust earlier on in his career. He's already surpassed Ingram and is already a 20-point per game scorer on a team that almost made the playoffs last season. So I definitely think with all of the expectations that Ingram has been given, even when you lower them a bit, he's still not even close to touching the surface of those lowered expectations. And that sounds a lot like Andrew Wiggins. And Ingram has too much potential and is too good to be on that kind of a level. So I definitely think that next year he needs to step up that game and avoid being in that Andrew Wiggins bust label, because that would be terrible for his career. But you guys in the comment section, let me know your opinions down below. Also, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so I can keep making content just like this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. The links are down below in the description box. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Peace.